What's up guys? Welcome back to another YouTube video. Today we are going to fix the overheating issues I had with the Z at the last track day, and we're going to do it totally the wrong way. Okay, so I do plan on upgrading the coolant system for real in the future with like a new radiator and some stuff like that. But for now, I thought it'd be a good idea to get some vents in the hood of this thing to really get some air flowing through the engine bay instead of just being trapped under the hood. That should drastically improve airflow, which of course will lower coolant temps. Now, I've had these vents just kind of kicking around the garage for literally years. I bought them a long time ago and thought, man, these are cool, and just never had a car to put them on until now. So I'm going to show you guys kind of what it takes to get something like this mocked up on your car, like a universal vent or something. I'm going to measure everything out. We're going to cut holes in the hood for it, and then we're just going to slap them on. And like I said, with a vented hood, should see a lot more airflow through the engine bay, which of course will lower those coolant temps. So let's get right to work. Step one of a project like this is determining placement. So where do I want these things? I kind of just tossed them on the hood where I thought they would look cool, and that's somewhere in this area. And after that, I just drew a tape line from the corner of the hood right here, one side to another. So I know that line's pretty much, even side to side. And then I drew another tape line following the body line here. That way I have a place to put the vents. And now I know, if I kind of just follow the line there and have it right there, it should be pretty even side to side. So I like the way that looks. Also, that's a little bit behind the radiator. The radiator on the car is somewhere in this area. So by having a vent slightly behind the radiator, that should draw air through the radiator and up and out the hood, which will help with the cooling issue I talked about. Now that we have the placement pretty well figured out, we have to determine the size of cut we're going to make. Now, obviously we can't cut the size of the vent, then it would just fall through the hood. If you flip the vent over, you'll see it has this flange right here. So this needs to stay on the top part of the hood, and the vent itself needs to drop in the hood. So we have to we can either measure the whole vent and then just subtract this amount right here, which is probably what I'll do, or we can measure the vent itself, which, I don't know, sounds a bit more tedious. So I might just trace the whole thing out on the hood and then just subtract this much. I think that's going to be the easiest thing. So I swapped the vents side to side and flipped them over so I can lay them completely flat on the hood. And now I can trace an outline of the entire vent. And then, like I said, I'll go back and subtract just this amount and kind of run that through the inside so I know what I have to cut. So we're going to use this tape line to line it up right where I want it. Get this corner right on the edge of the tape, and then we'll just trace it out. Now we've got a nice line of the overall size of the vent. Like I said, I'll just measure the flange, subtract that, and then trace that all the way around. Got our lines drawn. Nothing left to do now but cut. Couple tips here. If your hood is steel, cover the windshield. Cutting through steel will throw a bunch of sparks, and you can really easily ruin glass from that. The Z hood is aluminum, so I'm not super worried about it. The other thing I didn't worry about was what's underneath the hood, because there's a whole nother skin underneath the hood. So I would have to cut through both layers to get through pretty much anything in the engine bay. So now that I kind of know where I'm at, I can cut this out, and I'll do it a lot more carefully, paying attention to what's underneath it. Obviously I'll pop the hood. I may cut it from the back side as well. So we'll see, but overall the cut looks really good. Now I just gotta make sure the vent fits, and like I said, we'll cut the back side of the hood out. With the inside of the hood cut as well, now we have a nice hole there, and check that out. Fits perfect. I took the other piece of tape off the top just so I can get a better idea. I also cleaned the Sharpie line off so we can get a good idea what this looks. Lines up pretty good with that line there. There's a little bit of wiggle room here, side to side and front to back, so I can kind of fine tune it, but overall I think it looks pretty good right there. Now we just have to get to the other side. And just like that, the vents are in, and they look pretty even. I'm pretty sure the spacing's all good. They follow the body lines really nicely. Overall, I'm really happy with the way they look. Now we actually have to attach them to the car, and with that, I'm just gonna use some rivets I have some aluminum rivets. I'm using aluminum because the hood's aluminum. And I'm only gonna put a few in because I do plan on painting this hood rather soon, and I know they're gonna have to come back out. That's kind of why I took this job on now, is because I wanted to get the holes cut, the vents in, before I worked on prepping and painting this hood, which is gonna be in a DIY video, so stay tuned for that. Subscribe if you're not already, because that's gonna be a really cool one. Shameless plug aside, I'm gonna drill a few holes in these things and rivet them on. With that done, there's one more project I want to tackle today, and it was something I came to realize at the track. That's the car has no real toe points anywhere. The rear, because it has no factory crash bar anymore, there's no real spot. If, like, let's say I got stuck in the dirt or something at a track and had to be pulled out, there's no real spot to hook up a rope. I mean, I could maybe wrap it around like subframe or something way underneath the car, but that's totally inconvenient. So I'm gonna make a little tow hook for the back of the car. I actually already separated one of the base plates for the factory crash bar. It's like this 2-layered thing. It's similar to how the front was when I tried to do that and failed miserably. It went a lot easier this time. So I separated that. Now I have a nice plate that bolts where the factory crash bar went. I'm just gonna build a tow hook off that. So let me show you what I'm talking about. This plate right here is part of a standoff that held on the factory crash bar. I just drilled out the spot welds and pulled it apart. I'll show you a little clip of that. But now I have a nice plate that bolts onto the back of the car. I'm just gonna build a tow hook off that. So we have this plate that bolts onto the car. How are we gonna make this into a tow hook? Well, I have this bigger plate of steel. I'm gonna cut a big hole in and then weld it to that somehow, and that will kind of become a tow hook, I think. Cutting through thick plate steel with a giant hole saw is never fun, but it's definitely the best way to do it, because now we have a real nice clean cut, and now we can work on making this into some sort of tow hook. So we've got our plate that bolts to the car, nice and clean, ready to weld. We've got our tow hook turned into a nice shape, and now we just have to bolt this on the car and figure out where we're gonna weld this to that. With a few magnets holding it in place, you can get an idea of what I'm trying to accomplish here. So it's just below the bumper, and now we've got a nice place to just toss a little tow hook on and yank this thing out if I do ever go off track or get stuck somewhere. Now I just have to weld it up. I'll probably do some braces in the same spots that you see these magnets. That way it'll kind of triangulate it and make it a lot stronger. But for now, we're just gonna tack the tow hook to the actual plate, and then we'll worry about making some braces in a bit. Well, got it mostly welded. That side's all done. This side is almost done. Ran out of welding wire, so I'll have to pick some of that up tomorrow. Then I can cut out some little triangles to make extra braces like I talked about. Weld those on, and this thing should be plenty strong. So I'll catch you back in a minute for you guys. It'll be tomorrow for me, so we can wrap this thing up. And we're back. Got some welding wire from the hardware store. I'm gonna get this in the welder, get some little triangles cut out for that tow hook, and finish that thing up. First, let's get some wire in the welder. All right, got some triangle pieces cut here. Just gonna get these in place, something like that. Weld them in. That should give this a bit more support. It's pretty thick steel, so I'm not really worried about it like deflecting too much. But this should definitely add just that bit more rigidity to it. And just like that, we are all done. See, I actually pushed the little tabs all the way out to the corner and then kind of ground it down flush. I think it looks pretty cool. Got the top side welded out fully as well. Pretty happy with how it turned out. Now I'm just gonna throw a little coat of paint on this and it should be done. After a little bit of paint, this is the end result. Just flat black with the top of it kind of this weird yellowish green. I didn't have any red or yellow paint, which is what I would have liked to use, but I had this kind of funky highlighter color and figured why not just use that. I was just going for something that's bright enough that, again, if I flew off track, track official or tow truck would be able to see it and just strap a little tow hook on there and yank me out. So should be good enough. I'm gonna toss it on the car and call that job done. And that pretty much wraps that up. I'm really happy with the way that tow hook turned out. Hopefully you saw in that little clip, I also decided to paint the rear valence behind the bumper just flat black. I think it looks a lot better. It really cleaned it up because you used to be able to see some of the silver behind the bumper. Looks a bit better flat black now. And the tow hook turned out really good. I'm happy with the way it looks. Hopefully it works as well as it looks. I guess we'll only find out if I go flying off track one of these days. All that's left now to do is I want to take the car for a little spin. I'm curious to see if the coolant temps are any lower with those hood vents that we put in. So let's go for a little drive and find out. Been driving for a bit now. Hopefully you can see that coolant temp gauge. It's lower than it was before, which I'm pretty excited about. That means the vents are actually working. There you go. You can see it is below half by a considerable margin. So when I used to drive this thing, it was right at half, maybe just a smidge below. So there's definitely a decent difference just from having those hood vents in. Pretty excited about that. Had to give it a proper test. That is going to be a wrap for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm pretty happy with the way things turned out. The little hood vents are sick and they actually work, and we'll find out if the tow hook works one of these days. Anyways, give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and as always, I will catch you in the next one.